Welcome back to Masters Tour Jönköping. I am Raven, and joining me is Frodan to kick off this round as we do have our feature match coming right up. But Dan, how are you doing? How did you enjoy yesterday?
Yesterday was really fun, just to see a lot of familiar names, obviously, and some rising new ones. And it's a turn of a new era in Hearthstone because we have a few grandmasters who are relegated, and some people who are getting closer to making their dream of being a pro Hearthstone player come true. And this series, we're once again going to have a difference in some opinions here, as there is a warrior left up once more, as Brox is choosing to ban Demon Hunter, which I think is the strategy. So
Yeah, and this is something we've been seeing from a lot of players who, funnily enough, have been bringing Highlander Hunter, is leaving Warrior up. And that's just super interesting to me because on the surface at least, it does not look like specifically Highlander Hunter has a good matchup versus the Warrior. But again, this is where we might be seeing the idea of, well, if you just let Warrior have that win, so to speak, then maybe this lineup does well versus whatever you're expecting to be left over, which I can definitely see. I'm excited though, speaking of this Hunter, just to see this from Brox. I hope we get to see it played because he is bringing a bit of a different list. There's Frizz Kindle Roost in there, along with extra dragons. So Evasive Worm is just in there. Big old whelp, of course, Rot Nest. So really just the extra little sprinkling of an extra dragon or two, along with this Frizz, might just open up some of these stronger terms from Hunter.
yeah, the no Warlock lineup seems to be the one that's working out because in these top 6 players, we have 6 players who are undefeated. We have Matt FF as well as Brox as then we have Stone, Pignus, Requiem, Azu, and all these players that have 6-0 records or somewhere around there didn't bring Warlock in their lineup. So perhaps we can draw some conclusions, at least some light conclusions, that at least people who choose to avoid Warlock might be on the right train. Now, is it ban Demon Hunter and bring Hunter yourself? Could be, but at the same time, both of these matchups, Warrior and Demon Hunter, are pretty bad for Hunter. It's just that Demon Hunter seems even worse for the Hunter.
Right.
So if Warrior has a 40% chance to win, your Hunter is only 40% chance to win versus Warrior versus a 30% chance versus Demon Hunter, as the current Swiss standings show you, perhaps Demon Hunter is worthy of.
Yeah, and you mentioned, up-and-coming players wanting to get into, have that chance of becoming a Grandmaster. And Matt is one of them. He's a Polish player, and he has been to Arlington. He was at Bucharest as well, but he went 6-3 and then 5-4 in his Swiss record. So by no means bad performances, but just not performances that are good enough to actually make it into that top 8. And once you are in that top 8 of a Masters Tour, you are looking, progressively more likely to be in contention to get yourself a Grandmaster spot. So maybe this is the one. Maybe, third time's the charm here for Matt, as he has managed to piece together some level of prize money already from previous Masters Tours.
Yeah, and Warrior is still very much a threat, and you can see that even just the straight up deck list is good against most decks here, as Warrior has been let through, and the few times it has, it still boasts a positive win rate along with Demon Hunter and Warlock. We're not necessarily saying Warlock's a bad bring. If anything, it's done the best out of all the different classes here. But there's clearly a lot of merit to the don't bring Warlock, bring decks like Druid, because it seems to be working out. Now, that being said, it could also be a self-fulfilling prophecy. If so many people in the field bring Druid, there's going to be a percentage of them that are undefeated and a percentage of those people
Right.
that have Druid in their lineup. So, again, take these results with a grain of salt, but they definitely are interesting conversations.
Yeah, and even also in win rates, we saw a lot of, at the very beginning of the show, we showed the win rates, and they were very close between 48 and 52% roughly for the classes. You've got to remember as well, those win rates are from the tournament pool, which is showing mirror matches, which will again just drag these win rates closer to 50%. So even though we saw Druid sometimes during Grandmasters go between 30 and 40% win rate, if a ton of people are going to bring it, even just the mirror matches will kind of just naturally naturally push it towards that even win rate. But it's going to be interesting to see here. A pretty standard Druid list from Brox, though. I half expected to see some crazy tech in there or something we're not used to seeing, just based on how he's approached not only his Hunter, he's got some tech cards in the Demon Hunter as well, but also running an upgrade in his Warrior. Is going to be banned out, of course, but even that's just an interesting choice instead of relying on Captain Greenskin that we've seen some players do in and out over the course of the development of these Warrior lists. It's just going for an upgrade because maybe just having it not only super cheap in comparison to a 5-drop, but also having it available sometimes as just a weapon could be good enough. I'm kind of sad we're not going to get to see him play this match at least.
Yeah, I personally go back and forth on deck lists that include Captain Greenskin and Deathwing. I think that these are like pretty solid lists, but I do run into some hand size issues when I'm trying to like balance battle rage and I'm trying to plan more lean turns to answer aggressive starts because ladder does seem to be very dominated still by demon hunters and a lot of
Right.
other classes that get onto the board very quickly. And so I personally like the lean version of warrior right now, especially because there seems to be a higher prevalence of warlock on the ladder as well. And so when you have things like the Serpent Egg as opposed to, say, and Terran Gorfian as opposed to the Captain Greenskin list, it feels like it's a lot more resilient against board wipes,
Right.
which Warrior can be vulnerable to at times because if you just keep clearing their board and they're still at a healthy total, they'll never be able to draw with battle, at least
Yeah,
without themselves having risk.
Yeah, I find myself repeatedly, I'll play a greenskin list until I swing the anchor, need a risky skipper, and it pulls me greenskin. And then, nope, straight out, just throw the card straight out the list and make a much more smaller pirate pool available. As we've even seen some players actually cut the Sky Raider. One Sky Raider from the list just to make it even more consistent there. This is pretty interesting overall. But unfortunately, as I said, we're not going to be seeing Brox's Warrior. But Matt's does look fairly straightforward again, just with that list you spoke about, the Serpent Egg, the Terran. I think just the universally now agreed like final list of Warrior. We can see now where everyone's going to line up here. We have the splash of 6-0s at the very top there. But even looking at some of these 5-1s, we see Matt there, of course. We see Rami that we cast yesterday. And then Swit's up there as well, one of the Grandmasters from the European region, just rocking it, maybe coming out of nowhere, as I don't believe we've seen him on stream yet.
Yeah, we haven't really seen a lot of these people on stream, and part of it, even with the mystery of what Stone actually looks like, or is he just an ominous shadow here to play Hearthstone? No one really knows, perhaps. But there are a bunch of mystery players, right, who are kind of rising up. There's also like the X Factors from China, which I anticipate Stone being from. Hold on, we dig a little deeper. You can go ahead and find the background of a lot of these players from Europe, from APAC, but China is the most intriguing to me, given that they are closed off and they have their own wall. They're not playing really for grandmasters; they're playing for, of course, the money, but also the ability for them to also get practice against international players might be invaluable.
Yeah, it's something that really excites me about Masters Tours and the way Grandmasters works at the moment is we obviously don't get to see all of the regions clash until the very end. Whereas here in Masters Tours, we see players from just everywhere all around the world, and it is exciting to see these Chinese players rock up to the tournament and just and see what they bring. Like I said, even Brox, right, is bringing just some interesting version of Hunter and a different approach to his lineup. So I'm excited to see some more of the players. And I think the more we see players clash between regions, the more exciting it is, at least for me.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing some of that cross-region rivalry. Starting to bud a little bit on social media. I saw some grandmasters talking with each other, saying like, this is the way that I feel like people should be playing, or like I can't believe people brought this deck, and that kind of started some discussion about how people should be conducting themselves in terms of what they're talking about the metagame. Like you shouldn't really flame this, you shouldn't say that, and it's starting some banter back and forth, or perhaps it's a little bit more than that. I don't know. Either way, I'm here for the fireworks. I just wish I brought more popcorn.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for, we've just had Grandmasters finish last weekend. We've got Masters Tour this weekend. Next weekend is maybe a show match between a certain couple of players. I don't know. I'm willing to cast that one if the players are willing to play. That'll be pretty fun. But yeah, the players out there. Have you noticed there's probably just a slight delay? We just had an issue at Brock, just had a disconnect. So we just want to make sure he's back and just everything's stable before we kick off the match. Because although we have the lovely reconnect feature, why not just start in a good way and not hope to reconnect halfway through a game anyway? Yeah, just a lot to play for these players. And we are nearing the end now of just the Swiss stage. We've only got a few more rounds left, including this one, of course. And that top 8 tomorrow, there's going to be a lot on the line. And depending on what regions make up that top 8, there could be a lot of Grandmaster spots just up for grabs based on how the players actually finish.
Yeah, this round in particular is pretty important. Round number 7 is where some players can virtually start to lock their spot in. If they go 7-0 and the only people they lose are undefeated players, then they put themselves really high chance to qualify for the top 8. It is kind of a brutal cutoff, right? Because we have hundreds of players and we only can take a top 8 after 9 rounds. If you ask the players, they would ideally like to play, 36 rounds and stay for the entire week online playing, grinding. But we eventually have to cut off and eliminate some players. And there will be some on the bubble that unfortunately don't get to make it. And that's where it's really crushing, because some players who might be in position to potentially become a Grandmaster might end up losing on tiebreakers if they don't get a win in rounds 7 and 8. So we shall see how that pans out.
Yeah, and this is what's really tense. And also one of the reasons why, when we're talking about Grandmasters qualifications, it's not taken from just one tournament alone, right? A lot of these players are qualifying to every Masters Tour, which means it adds up their performance effectively across multiple Masters Tours and can help out with that. And that's why we see some players already in such great positions. Of course, there is Blazer, who's won 2 Masters Tours, put him in the best position possible. But even A-Rock, another European contender for a Grandmaster spot, placed very well in 2 of them, which means he's already looking to be, unless something really crazy happens, and a lot of the top 4 spots are made up from certain European contenders as well. He's looking like he's feeling pretty safe also. So again, although there's a lot riding on this one tournament, some of the players have already put the work in and got the results they needed to feel quite comfortable going into this one, whereas some other players literally need to top 4 minimum to be able to have a chance this time around.
Yeah. So, definitely pay closer attention to as we wind down the rounds of Swiss. Do want to kind of apologize as right now. It looks like Brox has actually disconnected from the client, so we're trying to get all of our administrative process online. Of course, we can't really proceed forward with Swiss unless every match is finished. So hopefully for Brox's sake, since he's already 5-1, he's able to reconnect, because it would be really unfortunate if some kind of international connection is failing him at this juncture of the tournament.
Yeah, it's one of the tricky things as we do get into the game, though, so everything's good to go. We're going to see Matt on the bottom on the Warrior versus Brox there on the top on that Druid. But yeah, I was just got to say, it's one of the cool things, and one of the outcomes of this being online, obviously, is pretty much anyone who qualifies can play as long as they're okay at being awake certain hours of the day. But it does mean we just get this huge cross-region play pretty easily here. But let's kick it off. Warrior versus Druid, and this is where I half sit back, Frodan, and go, okay, let's wait for the Warrior to win the game, and then we can get on with the rest of the series.
Well, I do feel like Druid does have a couple of windows of opportunity, and does require a hand very similar to Brox's, which is, by the time Warrior sets up, Druid will have almost a full palette of mana crystals to use to put out some really powerful board states. So he has ramp and card draw double with the form of Fungal Fortunes and Overflow, as well as Wild Growth and Overgrowth. So this is the kind of hand that Druid can win with against Warrior.
Yeah. Completely agree, and even the backup card draw and refresh from that overflow at the end, right? So there's pretty much everything. The big worry for Druid in this matchup, and I think we saw it yesterday. It might have even been in the first match on stream yesterday, but a Sky Raider got inner raised and then rampaged, and then pretty much just soloed the Druid because there was just not enough early removal to just stop the one big minion pushing tons of damage. So that's the weakness. Even when Druid has a good hand, they need to be able to stop a potential big push from Warrior early on. But it looks like Matt's not really got that big push in his hand with no Rampage and no Inner Rage.
Yeah, I do think the no draw fortunes is interesting to preemptively get ahead of what the Warrior can develop in case, they want to push out the cards like Bomb Wrangler. But, I actually do like that because he might be running out of things like hand space, and Rising Wind's just being used for 3-2 to generate a little bit of tempo. Might slow down Warrior just enough so that way you don't get as much under pressure in the early stages here. Because another way for Warrior to win, as many have seen, is just to pretty much just start playing things and Druid can't catch up in time because there's too much stats and too many cards coming the other way.
Yeah, and look at this. I feel like we've casted this game for about 10 seconds and Brox is on 8 mana.
Right.
As Druid sometimes is wont to do. And that's why we saw, I think, the Fungal Fortune skip earlier on, as you said, not only hand size, but because of the overflow and because of the ability to ramp so heavily, it meant that Brox could just say, okay, well, I'll just not draw now and just draw in a little bit. And then suddenly, look at this turn. There's options for Glowfly coming up for Brox, or more specifically, just an extremely strong Mount Seller board.
Yep, needed to ditch at least one card so with the Bog Beam makes sense, but this is not that intimidating of a board for Warrior. I am a little bit intrigued by the idea of potentially using Battle Rage this turn, but it looks like Batmat just wants to respond. Use the Bridge Skipper to respond to his opponent's board. If his Soul of the Forest came out with a Glowfly Swarm, for example, he would have that covered. So I like him keeping his options open. However, when you play reactive, I mean, this does give Druid a slight window of opportunity to climb ahead.
Yeah, this is huge. And even using the Bog Beam one of last turn, Brock still just has so much to do if he wants. He's got so much mana that he can play half his hand out here, make a full board. And because of the way Mount Seller generates... Oh, wow, that was a good bomb. Because of the way Mount Seller generates minions, the health pools are very oddly shaped, right, across the average Mount Seller board. So it's not as if Matt can just reliably say, okay, Risky Skipper, 3 dudes, there's the board clean. It's just not going to get the job done. That bomb did help out a lot. I think Brox is now looking for Crystal Power to heal this Mount Seller back up again.
Yeah, I do understand the need to try and keep that Seller on the board. Does end up finding King Mugla and Silverback Patriarch, 2 cards that are just annoying to deal with, and then taunting up the Porcupine so that way it does deal damage when it dies. Might be a ticket for Brox to handle the inevitable pressure that's going to come, because this is going to be a big turn coming out of Matt.
Yep. Welcome to drawing most of the deck, I imagine, as well, if he's going to go for this Battle Rage. What's that, 5 cards? And that's without himself being damaged? Oof.
Yeah, and it's also an opportunity to clear the board here. He does have the Rampage ready to go as well. I am curious, actually, how he wants to go about this, because if he does end up playing a Rampage, does he actually kill the Mount Seller? I think he was 1 damage off of that. So he's going to go for another Risky Skipper, and a Sky Raider just to crown.
Yeah, I like this. I think even though this looks rough and looks like he's putting a lot into this, one, as you mentioned, it allows him to actually clear this board. But also, I think it's just imperative, because he doesn't want to just die on the backswing. Double Savage Roar with a board left over. It always adds up to a lot of damage. And now, although it's very low health, these Druids don't run Swipe. So the board is, I'm not going to say safe, relatively safe from being fully cleared this turn.
Yeah, well, the nice thing is that 2 Risky Skippers have been used, which means that Warrior will have a harder time dealing with this if he simply just kills that Risky Skipper with his hero power. Can you go ahead and use Bog Beam, maybe even throw in the Iron Bark just to get more tempo on the board and make it harder for his cards to clear. And for Matt, I mean, he does have a lot of good cards in his hand, but this is still a lot of pressure coming the other way. Oh my goodness.
And this is where you see just the raw value of Brox just simply having way more mana than Matt for a couple of turns. Because he's able to do this, and now, as you quite rightly pointed out, with the Risky Skippers gone, and also with the Blood Bowl Brute gone, and Matt only being on 7 mana, there's limited things he can even do this turn. And as long as Brox just keeps hold of this board every turn for the rest of the game, he's just going to be able to win by just pushing Matt off completely. And there is Savage Draw in there. There is still some card draw with those Rising Winds as well. So it's not as if Brox has to make his own board stick at all costs. He has card draw, and he has some extra longevity in this game.
Yeah, and you can see that Matt's prioritizing maximum tempo here by just copying his Serpent Egg that's buffed by the Rampage. The alternative play was to set up some kind of weapon turn, just because he has so many charges through the Live Wire Lance and the Corsair Cache. But, you know, priorities first. Handle the board state, otherwise Druid will run away with it. And with that second Power of the Wild draw here for Brox...
33, I think.
Yeah, I was counting how much damage. It doesn't seem like he gets there, because he does get 4 power on the board for everything, the buff. So that's 20 plus 12 plus 1, so you're right, 33.
That pesky Armor Smith.
Yeah.
Just about keeping... And that's what I was talking about earlier for that Mount Seller board, right? Even though the board, it was pretty strong, but Matt just had to clear it off, because if Savage Roar and Power of the Wild came down earlier, then he'd be just as dead, right? So that's why he even looked like he maybe overcommitted in clearing it off, but that's why I respect the choice.
Yeah, that being said, this is still a pretty good spot for Brox. He could just go ahead and buff the board and just start getting really far ahead of everything. Okay, so... Rising Winds. I think he just wants to get a little bit more board presence here with that Power of the Wild. Trades, and then you can go face with the rest. Looks like he actually wants to control the state of the board. Actually makes sense, because Warrior's not playing any more Risky Skippers, at least not naturally. They would have to basically spike it off of another form of card generation.
Yeah, and I really like this. Like you said, one, a lack of AoE generally, but also what cards is Brox really afraid of? He's afraid of some chip damage and then maybe a Grom out of nowhere with an Inner Rage to finish. He's afraid of the second Blood Swan Mercenary on a really big minion to start pushing and threatening the board in that way. Right. Whereas if he just clears, like you said, it's so unlikely that Matt can actually clear this board in response, then okay, he just wins a turn later. You know, it's no real problem for Brox in this spot.
Yeah, and there's something that, you know, we were talking about yesterday, which was sometimes your win condition would be just to exhaust Warrior resources, and they don't have a lot of opportunities anymore, because Warrior, they fight kind of inefficiently at times, but because they have such an overwhelming ability to drive cheap cards to get massive tempo swings, sometimes it's a little bit too much momentum to stop. But, you know, like we talked about, like clearing the board a lot, and like making sure that they have to use their combo damage to just clear the board ends up making it super difficult for them later in the stage. So, you know, from Bronx's perspective, what's the best way to press in here? You know, he already has drawn a ton of cards, so Fungal Fortunes and cards like that are pretty easy to predict what you're going to most likely pick up here. What's the value of that versus just straight up playing things like Soul of the Forest, Exotic Mountains, other Glowfly Storm? It's all weighing in Brox's mind right now, because Warrior has kind of demonstrated that he has difficulty clearing the board. He played a weapon and a war ball challenge to try to clear things.
Yeah, I think there was one of two options here reliably for Brox. I think with his deck size now, it's only been 7 cards left, he's going to get to whatever's left if he needs it, no problem. I think the question for me, is it Soul of the Forest or is it Glowfly? I think both of them are good, because as we've kind of talked about for most of this game, Brox just needs to stick the board forever, right? And just never let Matt get on there. Bladestorm is a good pickup, but I will confess I can't quite recall the health of all the other minions on board. But at the moment, it will actually just kill off the Glowflies at least, right? Because I don't think anything was on 1 health.
Well, the catch-22 is that Ethereal Lackey is a 1/1. So if he has a way to kill his own
Sure,
Lackey
yeah.
reliably, yes. But yeah, unfortunately, it's just going to be a one and done.
Oh, where's just a random backstab or in a rage when you need it?
Yeah, it's pretty unusual where it might have been one of those situations where if you had like inner rage, you might have considered using it in this spot.
Right.
Instead, the Draconic Lackey perhaps can give him a taunt or a rusher. Twin Tyrant a little bit too expensive.
It might be Deathwing, honestly, yeah. Because Matt knows there's, I believe there's a Ysera left, yeah. Matt knows there's a Ysera and a Mount Cell left. So for the Mount Seller board, Matt's running out of cards anyway. He can just Deathwing it, and almost no matter what the Mount Seller board is, he's fine. For the Ysera board, if Ysera comes down now and then a couple of dragons pop out, which is very likely considering the size of the deck that Brox has left, then again, Deathwing will, I guess, beat the board,
Right.
and then you've got to say, well, are the dragons summoned randomly after that actually going to beat Deathwing?
Is that lethal?
Well.
I think it might be, because now you can use Moonfire and Crystal Power to push extra damage with the face. So if you Savage Roar, Hero Power, throw all the removal into the Pirate, the Dread Corsair.
Yes, it is lethal. Yeah,
it's lethal.
It's lethal with the Crystal Power, yeah.
Yep, so Brock's just calculating just to make sure, because the 12 on board with the Glowfly and the Rising Wind Seagull, plus the Savage Roar, that by itself is lethal, and all you have to do is just get past a taunt, so there it is.
Yep, the Crystal Power did the extra little bit of damage needed, and that's going to clean up game number 1 for Brox. And again, I really like the way he played this game. You saw the, I guess, the weakness of Matt having to play that second risky skipper to clear the board, and then just said, okay, I know your best resources and best clears are gone. I know your best ways at creating awkward boards against me are gone. I'll just keep hold of it. And I really like the way he played that, just making the trades over and over again when I think a lot of players would consider, especially with that Savage Roar in hand most of the game, well, oh, I'll leave this up, it won't be a problem, and push damage and then Savage Roar next turn. But the second you leave minions up with Warrior, they normally can cash in on that pretty heavily.
Yeah, and, a really big upset, all things considering. We kind of hyped up Warrior and how it just seems to be like a class that can't really stop, but it has a 52% win rate for a reason. That means 48 out of 100 times so far on average it's been losing its games. But that was an upset because the majority of the games being lost are to Warlock and Priest for the Warrior, and it's been winning more often than losing against Druid. So even though it's a favored matchup, we talked about how that was one of the hands that can win for Druid, so it's not a surprise to see Brox get the win there. And I like the different corners that he specifically tried to build board versus go for the card draw. I think in a couple of instances, I would have been more tempted to rip cards like Funko Fortunes when I'm on 10 mana a lot more aggressively than he did, but he picked the right time and understood what he needed from his deck when he's drawing cards versus playing for tempo.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I just liked the way he approached that match, I think, from every single angle. But again, just talk about the win rates and beating Warrior in general. I think a Druid opening like that, piloted correctly, which I think we did see that from Brox, probably beats most things, honestly, because he had the ramp, he had the card draw follow-up straight into a Mount Seller turn, and then not only that, he had the next wave of threats if the Mount Seller was cleared, which it was, but again, that was the issue. Matt had to use so much clearing the Mount Seller board first that the follow-up threats just stuck around that a little bit longer and caused some trouble for him going forward. So again, yeah, I like that from Brox. I'm excited to see if this Warrior gets queued again, and if Brox can continue to take games, because I think it would be quite the thing to see Warrior get swept in this lineup, right? If Brox just 3-0s Warrior in a match, I don't think we've ever seen that, at least during Grandmasters.
Yeah, and it sounds like for the most part that Brox's hardest part to get through the series might be things like his Druid, but at the same time, Druid's been very consistent. Just because Druid has one of the lower win rates of the class doesn't mean that it's a bad deck. And it could just be simply the volume of games that Druid plays against Demon Hunter. So when you ban Demon Hunter, all of a sudden your Druid's win rate jumps up pretty significantly, because the most popular non-mirror matchup of this tournament is Druid versus Demon Hunter. So, you know, if you take away that 43% win rate, that awful win rate for Druid, it actually ends up being favored against the rest of the field just simply by volume.
Yeah, and we are getting now into our game number 2. And Brox is playing the Hunter, so I'm always hyped, of course. But this opening, wow, even with the Sharpshooter, not half bad. Having the Ooze locked in if there's a Corsair cache, which we can see there is, of course. Brox knows it's fairly consistent that the live wire lance is going to be played next turn to kill it off, so he has that Ooze ready to go. Or he could even just freeze it out, actually, on curve. If he wanted to with that Shadow Weaver, and then just ooze it later on and whipping in a Hero Power or another 2-drop as well. So Brox, even already, has a very good plan laid out in front of him.
Yep. And with Brox's curve, he may be tempted to end up just playing Zephyrus for the opportunity to generate board presence, or if he just wants to use it to cement board presence once he's ahead, because Warrior is giving him a little bit of time to set up. That is one of the few downsides of Warriors, that you don't have many good turn 1 and turn 2 plays often.
I was wondering, just for a second, whether you go like strangely backwards and coin Shadow Weaver there to freeze out the weapon that you know is in hand, because I do think a reasonable chunk of time that weapon gets equipped anyway.
Yeah,
and then he can kill it off with the Ooze. It doesn't happen all the time, but I just wonder if he considered that. 'Cause it's a strange looking play, but I think it might have been pretty good.
Yeah, and I think that Frozen Shadow Weaver on 3 is often a response to Corsair Cache on 2. Because that is oftentimes one of the better plays for a Warrior, to draw a card, buff their weapon, make it be played on curve. And I many times as Warrior, when I've been playing against like Demon Hunter and I play Corsair Cache and they Frozen Shadow Weaver, I'm like, oh wow, I've made a terrible mistake.
I've spent all this mana and I've not actually done anything.
Right,
like,
then they hit me with the Shadow Weaver, and if I have the weapon, I still can't. Like, I take 8 damage at least from that.
Right.
Which is a lot if the opponent's trying to rush you down. So just look, this is a lot of damage also coming the other way.
Yeah, I do think this was well played as well. Of course, there was the nerf to Scavengers, which hurt me a little bit. But the Zixor still a nightmare to deal with if you get it out on curve.
Wow. Look at what Brox has. He has the Acidic Swamp, who's just shut down the weapon right now. And then has the Desert Spear to immediately pick out the board, and he also can eventually curve out into the Dynasty of Brandon at 7. This is an extremely powerful opening for the Hunter against the Warrior, and so Warrior can handle everything. The only question is, how much health will they have after they finish stabilizing?
Right, and this is the problem with the matchup as the Hunter, is it's definitely winnable, but for it to be winnable, you have to pretty much just stay ahead of the Warrior from turn 1. And if the Warrior ever gets hold of the board and gets to clear what you've got and still has a reasonable amount of health, you never really get that board back in the game because Warrior's so efficient at dealing with the minions. But here, Brox just has such an insane curve. He even has the brand just sat there, ready to go on turn 7. But yeah, I agree. Just the flexibility now of having to help this Zephyrus. There's the Frizz, the interesting tech in the deck to help out with the extra couple of dragons he's playing. But maybe this is just something a little bit different here. Maybe Zephyrus does come out.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about the offerings that Zephyrus would give you. It would most likely give you some kind of removal tool that's pretty cheap. Maybe because it sees a 1/6 on the board, it'll offer you Execute or Shadow Repaint or something equivalent to that. The thing about playing Zephyrs is that what do you do with the other mana if you're just going to be floating with it? I guess Frozen Shadow Weaver could also be played this turn as well. But it doesn't seem particularly mana efficient to do that either. I guess in his mind, he just might as well play Frizz and set up for his best possible turns next turn on.
Yeah, I think the reason for this, I think with a slightly different setup, he would have made Zephyrus kill the Warmaul Challenger, right? Because you're afraid of that card. If Rampage and Bloodsworn comes down, you're in trouble as a Hunter. But because Brox has exactly Varanus with the last swing of his Desert Spear, even if there's a Rampage and Bloodsworns comes down, Well, those two Warmalls are just dead anyway. It doesn't matter.
Right.
So I think that's why he held off again on the Zephyrus to just say, no, I can actually have more value from this. And wow, that's a good card. A 2-mana 5/4 untargetable.
Yeah,
I'd play that card, Froden.
Yeah, it's essentially like a buffed fairy dragon. And for Bronx, you know, he's pretty unhappy to see Matt get the Battle Rage off. You know, the Battle Rage ends up drawing a lot of important cards. Risky Skipper and Armor Smith. Does even have the Terran Gorfine opportunity as well. However, if Manaf takes too much damage from this, and, you know, Dino Tamer Brandon's coming out here, this might be too much damage to stop.
Right. And this was the trade-off that Brock set up. He knew by leaving the minions on board that Battle Rage could be a problem, or Bloodsworn could be a problem, but the fact that he gets to almost always fully answer that problem with just the Varanus on curve was the payoff, right? He gets to push some more damage, he gets Varanus set up, which is pretty difficult to kill for Warrior outside of a Blood Boil Brute, in which he'd already seen one of them. I like this a lot, and I would just love to see Dino Tamer Bran both to the face.
Yeah, it seems like it. There's no reason to try and use Zephyrus for any complicated combo opportunity. And honestly, you can't even do that. Shadow Madness wouldn't allow Terran Gorfine to die. Oh my goodness, though. That Armor Smith and the Bloodsworn Mercenary with the Risky Skipper is a ton of armor. The only question is, can he deal with everything? I believe he should be able to.
Yeah, he can just copy the Bloodsworn Brute, right?
Yeah.
And that can clear off the two big ones. He can use the Serpent to trade off against the Bran if he wants to keep the Terran on board.
That's so big.
But the problem here is, it's big, but this is Matt doing pretty much everything to clear this board, and he's not really going to have much of a board of his own left anyway. So then Brox could just keep on going. He has the Feywing, he has the Shadow Weaver, then the Animal Companion. So he has plenty to do still, and he is running all the late game package with that Nagran Slam included at the very top as well.
Yeah, so Brox, if he plays Zephyrus, can clear off a good portion of this. I think it'll offer you a potential swipe, just so you can isolate only the egg. And, you know, clearly the burn plan is not going to work. Your opponent just gained 21 armor.
Right.
So you're not going to be able to burn them down anymore. You're going to have to play a little bit more honestly through board presence. But the good news is your opponent just used one of their best combos in the game, which is Risky Skipper, Blood Boil Brute, and the Bloodsword Mercenary. It really doesn't get much better than that for the Warrior. And now that they are using a ton of their resources, barring any kind of card draw setup, you know, Warrior is going to be struggling to keep up with the Hunter threats.
Very interesting. Okay, offered him swipe regardless, no problem. I was going to suggest the evasive Feywing first, to then go 2-drop, 2-drop swipe, and make sure the swipe's offered. But I guess the board state, as you mentioned, is so susceptible to a swipe that Zephyrus was like, no, you're getting this no matter what man you're on.
Yeah.
So I do like that this happened, but I just think mentally I would have just gone Feywing first, just to ensure Zephyrus gave me that 4-mana swipe there.
Yeah, for sure.
But still had it.
So, you know, both players on relatively even counter resources. That's going to change because of Anchor. Anchor is super strong just to help pull all those pirates out of your deck. And that's a full board clear with pressure going the other way. So, you know, we were talking about how does, you know, Matt handle the Hunter pressure. And Brock doesn't actually have meaningful threats developed, and he's able to push damage.
It's so huge. The difference of getting deckhand there to clear off the Zephyrus versus having to consider using the Korkron was massive.
Right.
It's changed everything. He's put Brox under a lot of threat, but also Brox still has that. Now we can see the Zixor Prime, which is going to be huge again. Kill command to deal with the Korkron.
Right.
Freeze for the face. It's still looking like a strong turn for Brox.
Yeah, that Zixor Prime was very important pickup. So now he doesn't have to. He can just play, you know, defensively, clear off the board. Manaf with 4 weapon charges, both equipped and in his hand. It's tough to try and win from here just by board control. So he's doing the right thing, pushing damage. The moment he draws Grom now, and there's no taunt, he should be able to at least get that 12 damage plus the weapon damage swing.
Yeah, it's a true race, isn't it? Brox needs to kill him before, or at least put up a taunt of his own. He has the bone wraith and also the chance at Misha. But I think just for this turn, he should go for just the prime, clear the board, and then not only do that, but it threatens the lethal back as well, or at least in the near future.
Yeah, I think Brox could at least extrapolate that Madaf doesn't have things like Grom, or at least Grom plus Activator, because that's when your opponent floats 10 mana. I mean, I don't care how combo heavy it is, you should be kind of trying to play something onto the board and get a Hunter that's going to be building it up. So Brox, he's going to take the threat very seriously, control fully the state of the board, double trading, I imagine. Then,
yeah, he might.
Making it difficult for Hunter to get to his taunt.
He might actually think he does have Grom, but he needs to draw the skipper to activate it potentially, which is why he didn't play anything last turn because he couldn't swing to get his skipper.
Oh my gosh. This is insane. This might deal so much damage. I mean, this might end up just clearing off the board. Or effectively clearing off the board. Oh my gosh, it only hit for 1 on the Leok. Do you use the Inner Rage here? I don't think so.
I think you're at enough health to be okay at least for a turn. This might look a little bit different going forward though, because this 6-or prime is just so many stats on the board.
Right, and you gotta clear out the risky skipper. That's happening for certain. Guess you can just take out... Oh, so this is tough, because if you take out the boom bots, you might end up incurring more damage onto your board than you want.
I think as long as the bomb wranglers are killed, that removes the
Battle Rage?
swing from a big battle rage, yeah. So I think clearing off the minions that aren't bombs and just leaving the bombs seems fine, as far as I see at least. You know, both skippers are gone now as well, so there's no big like AoE activation for the bombs to some extent. Not that they would overly need it, of course, but I do think I like this and just leaving everything else to the bombs.
Oh. Well, I mean, now this is an opportunity for Matt to actually just straight up have lethal through boom bots.
Also, just a Grom now, right?
Yeah, I mean, Grom has been lethal, so to speak, because he had the ability to just kind of chew through with the boom bots. Battle Rage for 1 draw.
It's a big deal, though. If he'd left the Wranglers up, that would have been a draw for 3.
Yeah, huge.
And Grom would be lethal even post Battle Rage, right? There's enough mana. So, like I said, that's the big payoff for the reason I did like Brox trading those Wranglers.
Yeah, now Madaf hopes that he has defensive clears here and does end up clearing
bombs.
2. Yeah,
so much damage.
Some high highs and low lows of those boom bots. Sometimes it's dealing 4, sometimes it's just dealing 1 to a damaged minion. And Madaf's like effectively all in. Says, you know, now I'm waiting for the Grom. You can wait for Grom 1 out of 6, then becomes more favored with each passing turn.
Oh, not what he wanted to see. Let's just remember, Brox has Dragon Queen Alexstrasza. He still has Tiamat. He has Nagran Slam, which could have just been lethal. There is so many big power plays. Dragonbane as well. Stormhammer still would have been good to push damage, and he drew a Fairy Dragon.
Yeah, this is tough because Madaf might have to use Inner Rage here just to be defensive. He's going to swing to the face and see what he gets off the Lackey. Titanic Lackey would be great.
Sure.
Ethereal Lackey would be nice.
Okay. There are a lot of big power dragons.
Yes. Okay. Although, if you play Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, you still have to answer the board state. Because there's 7 power showing, you're at 7 health. You gotta clear off of this little bit of this.
I'm shocked he went for...
Oh, 1 mana off.
I was pretty shocked he went for Brightwing, but this does put the most damage on board right now, and has the highest chance at setting of those lethals. The Tiamat would have been insane if he just had 1 more mana.
Yeah, so now just going through pure board presence. Brox has 3 damage on board, 2 through the hero power, he's 4 off. Unleash the Hound off the top! Is lethal for Brox, and Warrior loses twice in a row in this series right now.
We might see the ever-rare Warrior sweep here. from this match. Really crazy game, actually. That went so down to the wire. It was pretty incredible. And although I am sure there are people watching, oh, Top Deck Unleash, so lucky or whatever. You heard the list of cards I was talking about earlier, right? There was no Nagrand Slam this game, no Dragon Queen, no Siamat, no Rotnest Drake. There was no Dragonbane 2 or Stormhammer. So much damage, but I will say Brox had a great start in that matchup. Just that opening was so strong. As I mentioned earlier, if Hunter can just stay on board for the majority of the game, they can do well versus Warrior. And Matt, although had a couple of good turns, I think he might have just had to do a bit too much when he did some of those clears in the mid game.
That's right. So now we have a 2-0 lead for Brox. All he has to do is get a win with Demon Hunter, which is perceived by many to be top 2 class, if not top 1 class in the game. I personally believe it's Warrior, but there's still a camp out there that just believes that it doesn't matter if it's Warrior or Demon Hunter, both are busted.
Right, that's the difference. There's the focus on whether Warrior is just so good, but also it's Demon Hunter and Warrior, and then everything else, right, is just put to one side. So very interesting to see, especially after this Masters Tour is over, what those stats end up looking like. And I do believe it is going to be Matt queuing Warrior again. So we'll either see Warrior get its victory over Demon Hunter, one of its initial very good matches, and why Warrior was really blown up in popularity at the start of the expansion as well, because it was one of the classes that at least had game versus early Demon Hunter. But it could get the win, or we could see the Warrior get swept 3-0. Oh.
Yeah, that's right. 3-0 over Warrior would be quite unprecedented. I don't think I've seen that once.
No,
in this
I've not seen
expansion.
it. Yeah, I've not seen it.
I've seen it close. Like, I have seen Warrior lose twice before, but to get swept, I mean, that would take quite an extraordinary, unlucky series of events if you play well. And I haven't really seen too many lines here that I feel like Madap is like completely off. Maybe there's an overall like macro game plan error, but in terms of his micro plays, they all make sense in the moment. And so for Madap, he ends up equipping the Anchor in this position, the Frozen Shadow Weaver, like we're talking about, to get ahead of it now that they've played Corsair Cash. And look at all this damage you're going to take. This is exactly what I was talking about, Raven. The Frozen Shadow Weaver.
What's that? 5 mana, draw a card, effectively. I guess he equips it as well, but it doesn't feel like it's worth a lot right now, is it? It's going to take so much damage. But just going off what you were saying, I do think Matt's played pretty well. It's just that Brox, one, had an insane Druid opening and really executed that plan well, and then also had a strong Hunter opening, and it did come down to a very, very close game last game. So taking nothing away from Matt, I just think Brox has had maybe the slightly better opening hands, but also just the slightly better execution.
Demons.
Yeah, and I think that really just defines the metagame right now, which is if you're going to play a reactive deck, it does depend on how strong your opponent's proactive opening is. Classes like Warrior and Warlock, which really thrive off of seeing their opponent play cards and then you reacting to it, and then eventually being able to proactively combo them, sometimes can just buckle under too much pressure. It does happen. Warrior's not infallible, nor should it be. And now Brox is in a situation where he has to kind of weigh how much he wants to extend onto this board versus push damage. He could, for example, just simply extend slowly, play a Battle Fiend, save the Satyr Overseer for after the risky skip return. Or he could simply just kind of play it safe and push damage through a Chaos Strike now and just kind of evaluate. So Satyr Overseer, I mean, this is still vulnerable to the same things, but it doesn't look like Madap has the best cards to handle this right now with just one risky skipper.
Right. Also, as well, he knows that now the Anchor can finally be swung, but there's still a chance that it doesn't draw exactly a risky skipper, and there's also a chance that Matt doesn't have one in hand naturally. So I think what Brox is doing is, it's not like he's going all in. He has tons of fuel in his hand, right? The Metamorphosis, the Skull, double Chaos Strike. He can go for quite a while yet. But what he is doing with this play, although it looks like he's playing into the AoE, is saying, well, the times you just don't have it, you're just dead. You just lose, because the board is that strong, right?
Very much so. And he's also dealing damage, so he knows that there's a risky skipper chance that his board gets cleared, but if it does, he's hoping that the damage has been dealt to the point where his Metamorphosis and his Chaos Strikes can carry him through the rest of the game, which, Looks like it can't, because we're talking about how Madaf does have the Risky Skipper, but he doesn't have Armor Smith. And Risky Skipper Armor Smith is the combo you're often looking for in this matchup, because you will stabilize eventually against Demon Hunter. The only question is with how much life will you have. And that's how the Frozen Shadow Weaver is so crucial to stalling, because you add, 4 or 8 more damage to the opponent.
Yeah, it's just too little too late, isn't it, a lot of the time? And with this build, the most common build of Pain Warrior, like you said, it is just the armor for any of that regeneration or armor gain, because there are some like control variants that run shield blocks and stuff like that, but this is not one of them. And just the Warrior hero power alone does not beat a Demon Hunter that's trying to go face. It just does not work.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by this turn here from Matt. He ends up going kind of puts you in a situation where if they have like I-Beam plus any kind of development, or even, heaven forbid, an altruist setup, you would lose almost everything, and you would be completely stranded with no way to even have a comeback. So, I guess maybe the comeback would be that he would have Anchor to slowly get more cards out of his deck and eventually outvalue the Demon Hunter. But we all know that Demon Hunter can also play the opposite way. They don't have to necessarily just aggro you down. They can play it slow with Skull of Gul'dan and eventually just set up burst turns to push you out of the game.
Yeah, I think what Matt's doing here is saying, yes, this is a rough turn. This is not fun. He would rather not put 2 Risky Skippers down, but it's what was required to have the highest chance at being able to keep hold of this board. Because if this whole thing can't be cleared up, I think this board's pretty tough to clear from Demon Hunter, honestly. If this board sticks, then this Bloodsworn Mercenary can get some use, or even just the extra stuff from the weapon. Whereas, to get use of a Risky Skipper, if he held it in his hand, he would also have to rely on either a Battle Rage draw or a draw into a significant amount of minions, which is pretty difficult with, at the time, only a Bloodsworn Mercenary and then 1 Pirate draw from the weapon.
Yeah, again, it's totally understandable, given that he really needs to clear off all the minions onto the state of the board, and he would, of course, would rather use Sky Raider than his second Risky Skipper. It's just that right now he's very open to one decisive board sweep. And if actually he's clearing his own board, because this Risky Skipper will activate twice, but he's going to leave up his own Serpent Egg, and he's going to deal 5 damage. I mean, this is
not bad, is it?
This is not bad coming the other way.
He could also just go in a rage now with Bloodsworn Mercenary number 2 and make a huge board. I like it.
Yeah,
I like this a lot. This just says, all right, okay, you threaten me a lot, but what about now? Do you have either clear, or it's probably not lethal with only the Umberwing equipped right now?
Yeah. Frozen Shadow Weavers have been utilized already, and so now, Warriors effectively all in with this pressure. Obviously, they still have more damage to go because they have 7 just through natural weapon swings, the 2 swings with Live Wire Wance plus the Anchor. So the magic number here for Madaf is 7. If he can get 7 damage the other way, he will guarantee have lethal the next few turns. The only question becomes, how does Bronx answer through cards like I-Beam, Glaive Bat Adept, and if he can find a way to set up 2-turn lethal while holding back the pressure.
Demons.
Yeah, and this is a little bit more tough for Brox as well. He is only running 1 I-Beam in his list to make room for this one Sightless Watcher, the 1 Blowtorch Saboteur that's in there, as well as a Vulpera Scoundrel. So it's just a little bit more difficult, a little bit less consistent with all these one-offs. But it's a tough call. I don't know. Does he have to just try and get this Glavebound live? Maybe Hero Power swing into the 2-2? Glavebound, one of the big ones?
Yeah, I would say you need to... You absolutely have to kill the 5-3 because you're dead otherwise. But there's still 13 power showing, so if Madaf draws a single point of damage, it's game. Sky Raider can pick up a couple of ways to add damage to Pirates. There's not one of them. I actually wonder if it's better to swing with Livewire Lance in this position so you have a chance for lethal.
Yeah, it's weird though because it removes the Rush Lackey from being...
Ah, yeah, you're right.
Because it's only a 2-2 weapon. So you remove 1 damage, but you could get Cobalt Lackey, which then helps.
Well, the Corsair Cache pulls the second Livewire Lance, which gives him that Goblin Lackey out for lethal.
Yeah, for some reason I thought that was his second lance in hand, but no, you're right. He's not used one yet. I forget that this was just frozen for like 3 turns.
Right, this is the anger equipped on 3.
This is this. Yeah.
But I mean, also to go to show you, Warrior is threatening to kill on turn 7 as well. But
Right.
here we go. 2 out of 7 minions kill. There's also the possibility that Ethereal
He's got it.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
And hey, Warrior finally gets through. Needs definitely luck on their side to abstain from or to hold off the pressure, the abated. And overall, like, Matt is probably relieved, but man, that took a lot of games for Warrior to get through.
Yeah, and even that last game was quite close, wasn't it? We saw just that one big turn, and because Brox didn't have Metamorphosis live, and I think most importantly, didn't get hold of a Warglaves of Azeroth, it meant that he couldn't clear the board. Imagine if he just had a little bit more of a secure way to keep that board empty just for a turn or so, then that would look a bit different. But I do, again, respect the play from Matt. He put forward a pretty aggressive board. I really liked the extra Serpent at the end there, and then just a quick... at least not tripping up on the whole, he could Corsair cash and give himself a slightly higher chance at getting out for lethal there was nice. And it paid off. So I'm glad for Matt that he got a win with that Warrior again. We'll have to wait for another day to see Warrior get swept. Maybe it just won't be until the new expansion comes out. Who knows? But it's still going to be an uphill climb here for Matt, as he does have his Rogue and Druid left over, and Brock still just has his Demon Hunter, and Demon Hunter has great matchups versus these classes, or at least a great one versus Druid.
Yeah, against Rogue, it does seem like, it's actually starting to tilt slightly towards Rogue the more I watch it, especially for Rogue that have shaped up their early game with Spy Mistress and playing other early game cards. That being said, we have some spicy tech here, Raven. We see Akama making their way into this deck, as Akama is a legendary that shuffles Akama Prime and then gets a permanently stealth minion. We don't really get to see much of that in Rogue, but I guess if you're looking for some late game damage opportunities that can be potentially guaranteed, maybe it works.
It's one of those, I actually really like Akama as a card, but I just think it suffers from the current meta, where Rogue, at least recently, wants to be a little bit more defensive. So the fact that the minion is untargetable in terms of the prime, or at least unattackable, means that it can't taunt or it can't soak damage for you, because although it's a threat, it's not a threat your opponent can often actually remove, right? So they ignore it. Whereas I think a lot of the time with Rogue wanting to be a little bit more defensive in the mid to late game, they actually want their opponent to trade into their minions and not hit them in the face sometimes. So we'll see how it pays off. I do like it. One thing I don't like, and I think we might see a bit of suffering here from Matt, is no Spy Mistress, like you mentioned. I think Spy Mistress is so good right now, and especially in this matchup, it gets an insane amount of work.
Yeah, I think that, this lack of early game is going to hurt particularly in this matchup, just so you don't have to use multiple forms of removal before you even get to your questing adventure. And, this Blazing Battle Mage getting backstab is nice. And everything actually seems to be lining up all right here for Madov, as he does have his Dirty Tricks also ready to go. Ooh,
yeah, and again,
being greedy so that he can get questing adventure buffed. I mean, if this gets punished by a beaming psychic, you're super sad. But it's not. It's not going to get punished.
No, and it's... I do like, again, the secret in this matchup. Demon Hunter does play a lot of spells, actually, even though it feels like it's almost like a zoo list, right? With just tons of minions in the early game and weapons, and the game ends. They do actually put out a ton of spells throughout the average game, so this Dirty Tricks is very likely to draw Matt some cards very quickly. But the problem with this this questing is, with just a backstab, it is susceptible to a reasonable amount of removal tools. Just one Chaos Strike plus a Hero Power would deal with it. The I-Beam that we can, of course, see in hand. So, yeah, although I like it, you do have to worry here that if you take too much damage early on as Rogue, your mid-game and late-game recovery just isn't as strong.
It's true. It's true. Especially with Ziliax rotated out for months now.
Right.
Seal Fate was a very nice draw, because now Matt doesn't have to play Questing Adventure to start answering things. He's trying to go for a decisive tempo opportunity. Now, Brox has to kind of weigh the threat of ambush, but he's going to find out it's not. So with this, should pretty much narrow it down to just the dirty tricks, as most people do not play any kind of ambush in their drone deck was these days.
Bamboozle.
Sorry, bamboozle.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. I just said he's waiting for the ambush, but he doesn't have ambush. But you knew what I meant. Thank you.
Or is this just a trap all along? I don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it does look like this quest adventure, or at least the first one, has to be brought down now. Now, instead of trying to snowball the quest into win, I think this is actually in a roundabout way more of a defensive play, right?
Yeah.
Matt just needs something on board that is actually going to trade versus these minions. Never mind, actually finish the game.
Yeah, which is something to think about. Like, I think Matt is specifically trying to go for breakpoints and health that can make it difficult for the Demon Hunter. So if he played Questing Adventure the previous turn, it would be a 3-3, which could easily get chopped up by I-Beam or Twin Slice or other things. But by playing it this turn, he kind of is opening himself up to the possibility of a Gleipman Adept because his opponent has a coin. And I guess that's okay for him because then he at least gets 2 cards in exchange.
And I do like this. I was going to be quiet until this play was made. It would worry me if Brox ever didn't go for the I-Beam and maybe went for a trade instead. Because I get, like, not giving your opponent cards, playing around dirty tricks. But there's a limit to that, right? If that secret makes you just not play spells for most of the game, then that secret is way better than 2 cards for your opponent, isn't it? So I do like, there was just a pause there to make sure he did it, but I do like the fact that he did just play the I-Beam there, even though it gave Matt some extra cards to mess around with.
For sure.
Shadow Step and Prep for the spell lackey, wow.
Has an opportunity to prep several spells that are good. Secrets tend to be one of the more common ones. Clever Disguise, so it's an opportunity to potentially strike gold here. And a secret, okay. He ends up immediately looking at it because I guess he wants to get ahead of any potential Gleipman Adept turn. Also, this does complicate things for Brox. Like, does he have a Noble Sacrifice that he has to play around? Also, the possibility of just other secrets that can make things complicated. Has to account for Redemption.
Even Never Surrender, right? If he plays the spell now, then he's going to gain health. The big deal as well, it's not already talked about, but that Lightforge Blessing in hand against Demon Hunter, that's a twin spell as well. So if Matt can stick some even just reasonably sized attack minions on board, he can start to lifesteal a lot almost out of nowhere.
That's true. You don't really expect things like Lightforge Blessing, and that's kind of the power of Rogue when they can play in that style where they can generate cards and just keep so many, secrets from their opponents. Brox does have a clear with the War Glaives of Azeroth. It is expensive in one fashion. Either it costs him cards, or rather minions on the board, or it's going to cost him a lot of health. Do you want to take 16 or just 8?
I'm all for face tanking a ton of damage from minions, but I think now you just take the 8. I think this is a reasonable sacrifice to make. I think 16, although brave, is a little bit foolish.
Yeah, I agree. Brox immediately just pushes the damage. Matt, thinking about Flick Sky Shiv just to gain some board presence, does not want the Shield of Galakrond to get chewed up easily. The downside is Flick Sky Shiv just kind of gets eaten up by the hero power with the War Glaives.
Yeah, at least this requires more than a hero power, right? Which is why I actually like the Shield of Galakrond. Whoa, okay.
Conrethid makes its way onto the board. No demons in hand. Funny enough, it's not like Brox necessarily wanted a hero power this turn. He was thinking about Skull of Gul'dan, although that Chaos Strike might change his mind.
Chaos Strike looks very clean and allows him to push damage, doesn't it?
It does, and it's not trivial damage at all. It's 5 damage that you can go face guaranteed if you want to use Chaos Strike here, because you can clear 4-5.
And it leaves the Blowtorch up, right? Which means that that doesn't need to trade, so that can go face as well.
Wow, Metamorphosis off the Volpare Scoundrel, doesn't have to dig for it anymore. Sees Repentance, which is great, so, I mean...
Keeps things simple.
Yeah. So now can just set up that lethal opportunity by pushing that 6 damage to face.
But where does he put this blowtorch? And does he use the final swing to actually trade the board away? We can see that would pay off a lot because it's a Lightforge Blessing in hand. But you can't blame Brox for doing this. It is so much damage to face, and it sets up, outside of exactly Galakron on curve, it sets up almost guaranteed lethal, right? Almost.
Right. Oh, jeez, that's an
imagine.
awful Pharaoh Cat.
Yeah.
That's not the kind of fetch you want to play. And, you know, the thing is, he pushes 6, but the Lightforge Blessing heal is only 3 at best with the Counter-Ethid. I guess you could attach it to the,
could be full.
Lackey. Does seem pretty weak.
And there's 2 there as well. So with, what, hero power? Metamorphosis hero power.
Right. Actually,
that should get the job done.
Yeah, that's just lethal because he's not expecting the Metamorphosis right back.
Yeah, technically, the Lightforge Blessing would have healed him for extra, right? Because I guess no, he had to trade anyway. But regardless, that is going to be the game. Brox does it 3-1. The help of that Metamorphosis. Lightforge Blessing not proven to be a huge problem for him to overcome.
Right.
Takes the series and goes up to a 6-1 score in Swiss.
It's like, how do you expect Rogue to have lifesteal like that? And then how do you expect them to have the Metamorphosis? I guess the Volpara's counter Metamorphosis happens way more often than Ethereal Lackey into Clever Disguise, into a Lightforge Blessing to give lifesteal to a class that's not supposed to traditionally heal very much. So, you know, quite a amusing ending that ends up landing in the place we thought it would be. But you know, it goes to show you the power of stopping that early game pressure from Demon Hunter. Because even though he had Backstab, Seal Fate, early questings, double Pharaoh Cats, Shield of Galakron, it just felt like it wasn't even close. Demon Hunter just completely overwhelmed that Rogue.
Yeah, that's it. And I think it's why I think even going forward, however much longer we've got in this expansion cycle, we will see Spy Mistress almost a staple in Rogue, because the difference we see in just that matchup between a player having one and not seems to be absolutely huge. But again, congratulations to Brox. As I mentioned, he's going 6-1 now in Swiss, which is looking pretty strong. And if he can keep it going, looks like he'll be able to book a spot in that top 8 for tomorrow. But for now, we are done with this match, but there's plenty more coverage from this round coming right up. So don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back with some more Masters Tour Jönköping.
Trusted Legion, forward! Can you hear the thunder in the distance? Time to roll, Trusted Legion. Wow! Cannot run, cannot hide, say goodbye to your existence. Join the army of flesh and crawl. Here we roam, this is our world. When you bend your mortal knees, to Jarax is your new king. His upgraded abs are undefeated. Merciless, so alpha demon, no one can defeat this team. Legion, let me hear you scream! Our enemies fall in the crimson sand. You have no choice but to join our band. Serve Mecha Jarax, this is evil plan. The Rusted Legion sowing ashes in our land. Attention, denizens of Outland! Prepare yourself for the biggest, baddest event this side of the Dark Portal! The Fire Festival? Incorrect! It's the Hellfire Festival of Music and Vengeance! Vengeance! Coming to the fairgrounds of Hellfire Peninsula over 4 weeks, spanning 5 stages. The Hellfire Festival includes a lineup guaranteed to sizzle your grizzle. Week 1, in Bob's Big Amphitheater, pirates are invading battlegrounds. A brand new minion class is here to swab your deck, along with 15 new minions and 3 new heroes. And they won't just be at the Hellfire Festival for one show, they'll be here forever.
Wait, what did he just say?
Week 2, in the Thirsterator Pavilion, the one, the only, Alana Starseeker takes the stage in a brand new solo adventure, Trial by Hellfire.
See you on a face-off against Mecha and the Rusted Legion! Your doom awaits. While she's here, she'll be throwing down with the pirates over in the battlegrounds as a fourth playable hero!
Wait, what did he just say?
Then we kick it old school for a special command performance guaranteed to burn your crusade! Charging in week 3 are the Triumph by Hellfire Challenges! Relive the hits and slashes, such as Kill Plus,
You will not prevail.
Mactherodon, and Lady Barge! Co-headlining in week 3 is the baddest brawl to ever blast them all! The return of the Burn Down! We've added new weapons to hack, slash, and crush your opponent! And speaking of weapons, week 4 on the Rusted Chainsaw stage! You want to be part of the Rusted Legion? Well, you get your chance when you enter the Rumble Dome! Choose a henchman, grab a weapon, and battle for a spot next to Mecha himself! The glory will be yours! As will Tetanus! Whatever. For all attendees of the Hellfire Festival of Music and Vengeance, you will have the chance to earn numerous rewards the likes of which Outland has never seen! For all the details, check out the festival flyer. Make it your desktop background. Print it. Get a nice frame and hang it on your wall. Just keep it handy. It's got everything you need to know for joining us at the Hellfire Festival of Music and Vengeance! I should never have taught you to self-promote.
Welcome back to round 7, which is still in progress. So we're going to show you even more action from Jönköping, or Bedroom, or whatever you like to call it. And with me this time around to help fill the time until round 8 is Gia. How are you finding this today, Gia? Who's going to win all this and all that good stuff?
Oh, today is one of the greatest days in Hearthstone esports. At least if you're following everybody on Twitter, there's been some spicy trash talk thrown around. You love to see it. But with this particular match, you called it filling the time, but for me, Lorinda, this is a main event level thing. It's going to be Baby Bear on stream versus Zever. Not too familiar with him, but Baby Bear, a longtime friend of mine, and really an impressive player. She keeps qualifying and finally has a good score to show for it.
Yeah, and she beat Lion to get to this score, and that's a massive deal, beating the world champion. I'm glad Baby Bear's finally getting on stream. We don't see enough of her by a long shot. She has been around for a long time, back to the tour days and everything, constantly getting positive win rates, but finally getting a shot at this top 8.
Yes, great to see. And to get there, she's brought a very unusual lineup, not just with this priest that we're seeing right now, but also, and so far it's been working out great for her, only dropping 1 series. And as you said, she beat Lion, who is of course one of the most impressive and storied players we have in the entire tournament. So Baby Bear, one to watch, but I'm also very interested in what Zever has to say about it. He's already up 2-0, but if I've been listening to Priest players say anything, this is definitely a favorable.
Yeah, Priest players say that, but then you watch them play the show match and they lose 8-3, especially in particular against this build with the green skin and the Deathwing. This is the build that the show match is a bit of a lie. I think 8-3 was over the top, but the inclusion of green skin means the Priest has a lot more problems in the matchup.
Yes, it just gives the weapon charges a bit more bite, consistent draw if you get Anchor, or even additional lackeys to help the warrior continue value. It's for Priest to win this matchup, I think it largely depends on not just removing warrior's threat, but also managing to stick an apotheosis target is the big one.
Yeah, so one of the things you can do as the warrior is not panic too much in the very, very start. You really want to get the board, you really want to start getting that damage in there. But as long as the apotheosis isn't healing the priest back up and you can deal with the minion when it's buffed, it's not such a disaster as once you've got the board, once you start putting that damage in, you must never let them get an apotheosis from that point onwards.
But this opener is kind of a disaster for Zever because he had that weapon and was really hoping to coin out Captain Greenskin, but the perfect tech cards, 1-2 punch, freeze the weapon into remove it with the ooze. Baby Bear is of course running Highlander Priest, which is why she has these copies of unusual cards that you might not see in regular old Galakrond Priest. She does have Galakrond itself, but when you're not running the whole package, it's still fine as a removal option and a value generator later on.
Yeah, and there's something about Priest players, they really stick by their deck. Once they start playing, it's some sort of addiction or something horrible to playing Priest. I do think the deck is underutilized in this particular tournament, and because of that, it's got, or it had at the end of yesterday, like a 58% win rate.
That's really impressive.
But that's subject to change, and maybe it's because nobody really targeted it because those people correctly guessed there wouldn't be a lot of Priests here.
Well, Baby Bear ripping her Dark Prophecy, definitely don't want the Ancient Watcher. Zephyrus is naturally in the deck as a Highlander option. I don't think Priest has a way to bounce that back up, but just getting the extra health buff is a pretty decent minion. I was also looking at the possibility of Amet plus Forbidden Words, but obviously with a trade onto the Warmail Challenger, the Forbidden Words could get better targets later on, and I definitely like Baby Bear's line.
Yeah, and I think she's just in a great spot with this one. Obviously, when you're in a favourable matchup and you actually end up getting the board early like this, as the control deck, it's very, very difficult to get back into it for the Warrior, I think. Yeah, he's playing the green skin now just because no better option, and that's when things really start to fold up.
Oh, yes. Baby Bear has that Shadow Word Dust to get rid of this, can drop the Amet alongside it. But again, if she wants to be even more conservative with her resources, we could see her go for a trade. But I definitely think that if the trade costs the whole minion instead of letting the value trade and heal back up, as Priest likes to do, it's much better to use her removal option there. And she is just running away with the board control.
Yeah, I think this was Ziva's last chance to pick up something that was going to get a risky skipper and go for bomb wranglers and armor smiths and try and get something done. And now just it's an open goal. Baby Bear can just do as much damage as she likes over the next couple of turns. Although, unfortunately for her, run into a wall of things here. She just needs to be able to play any minion now, and I think the game would be over.
Right. This is a very Priest-style hand, a bunch of removal and nothing to do with it. But honestly, if that is the problem you have as Priest, then you're probably winning the game. If I'm Baby Bear, the only thing I'd be worried about is potentially some type of huge combo damage, but that won't be available for many turns to come, and Zever's already down to 12, so I think Baby Bear is completely fine here.
Yeah, the Warrior just doesn't have the mechanics to get boards back without Spell Lackey into Brawl almost exactly. 7 health minions are just the end of it. Obviously, this is a way back in the game for a turn. But this is supposed to be your clear up and use up all the Priest removal turn, not, oh, I can finally use my penance I've been trying to use for 6 turns.
Correct. The Death Wing was probably Zever's only way to get back the board from that position, because even with a risky skipper hand, the minions just had too much health from Baby Bear's side, and so Baby Bear doesn't get to end the game quite yet, but I'm sure she's not too upset because she had an easy answer. And following this turn, her power cards can start dropping one after the other, be it the Murazon, the Soul Mirror, or Dragon Queen Outclaw.
Yeah, the problem is going to be, though, this is Conquest, and she's 2-0 down, and her opponent has a Warrior up. And that, despite winning with the Priest, and she's doing it right, I believe at some point in the tiebreakers, the scores matter, so you start with the most favoured, as opposed to GM where that wasn't a part of the tiebreakers, so you saw people queue up their worst matchup because they either wanted to lose or they wanted to sort of, yeah, if they're going to get into it, they wanted to have a good matchup at the end.
Sure. Baby Bear, I think, has teched her lineup against Warrior in particular, not even running Demon Hunter. She has a Mage in there, and I haven't taken a look at the build of the Druid, but I do think this is a matchup she would be relatively comfortable facing. This turn, there's an option for Soul Mirror, which we see her going for max board presence instead, and I expect that she will just be removing the Skipper here. I think that the board, because she is so healthy, was not very threatening, but my possible reasoning for Soul Mirror is that this tends to be the type of board you want to Soul Mirror from the Priest perspective in this matchup, where you can get the Armor Smith and benefit from the Bomb Wrangler as well, and you're not taking too much damage by leaving up a couple minions.
Yeah, it's volumes there spoken. The fact she just doesn't even need to bother. It's a
Right.
fantastic position to be in. And really, we're just going to talk words for the next few moments while we wait for this game to end, unless something nutty happens, because I guess we should keep an eye on the Cork Run and the Mercenaries combo. It is
Right.
there, but Baby Bear just still has everything left.
Right. From Zebra's perspective, this is a decent push. Gets to copy the bomb wranglers, and with that bomb outcome, can even trade away into the Alex Straza. But at this point, if you're Zebra, you probably don't even trade. He's healthy enough, and he doesn't have to worry about burst from Priest. Of course, you might push it all face, and then you could be saying that Baby Bear, the only way she punishes you is with exactly Soul Mirror. And from a high land, there's also, I guess, Zephyrus.
Yeah, and she absolutely, I think, I haven't been keeping 100% track of the nonsense of cards that have gone just because of the weird way this has gone. But if he has both Inner Rages left, then the most he can do in one turn for combo is 22. And so Baby Bear will be looking to keep above 22, if at all possible, to stop any weirdness at all from the double Inner Rage, and that's if they're both there.
Well, this looks like a pretty clean Soul Mirror. Gets to clear everything, end up with a bomb of her own. There will be bombs going in every which direction, which could make this a little bit weird.
Yep. I think she's probably just processing what happens if she plays Morozond. Because I can't process it, and I'm not playing the game. So in the middle of that game with everything else going on, it's going to take a while.
Yeah, there was
Because
a
you do get a
mercenary.
brute at the end of it. Yeah.
Right. There was the Brood and the Battle Rage, but that can go in a wrong order sometimes.
But she's worked it out, so let's see exactly how this goes.
Drink your blood, eat your flesh.
Okay, with the Varanus able to be played, of course, by getting the Skipper. That's actually a sick combo. I did not see that. That was awesome.
Yep. Definitely worked out because everything else didn't go.
Right.
Like, we're both looking at the screen going, well, what? Why is this happening? And stays above 22. Look at that.
Yeah. Perfect there. I mean, eat your heart out, Varanus Unleashed. Varanus is where it's at now. And for Zever, he did already expend an Inner Rage there to copy something of substance. And so even if he had the 22 damage, it wouldn't even get there.
Yeah, that's if it's even still 22 available, which I wouldn't like to swear to at this point with no deck tracker. Because you end up, when you have those terrible starts, you quite often burn Inner Rages and stuff just
Right.
to stay alive. So there's a good chance I'm just, like, hallucinating at this point.
He does have 3 out of the 4 cards to get that. It's just whether there's a second Inner Rage.
Yeah.
But for now, he has to do his best to remove all the threats on board from Baby Bear. Varanus and Murazon, giant dragons from this priest.
And also, just to point out, if it isn't there, the reason I keep talking about this stupid combo is he's so low on stuff, he's unlikely to win it without a chunky hit in one turn or another.
Correct. Baby Bear has staved off most of the minion threats, and because she was ahead on board as of this turn, she can stave off minion threats every turn going forward. And I agree, Zever's best chance is to hope A, he doesn't die immediately, and B, that he draws toward that combo, and C, that Baby Bear doesn't heal even more out of range.
And Holy Nova looks like a good way to ruin most of those things. In one card.
She can even go get a bomb behind this card for her trouble, fit in another heal. Even if that bomb had hit face for 4, very unlikely outcome, she still could have healed up back to 23. I guess it's not entirely safe because Zever's held onto this weapon charge, but at 27, there's just no way he can combo her down.
Yep, he's got to swing now and try and get some sort of crazy lackey. Don't know what you would call it. Call it crazy lackey, I think. Win the game lackey. That's not it. That's a kobold lackey. That's absolutely not going to win the game.
So is it 1 in 8 now to win the game lackey?
Yes, 7 lackeys plus win the game lackey.
I've forgotten
good
it.
game
That's
designer.
so unlucky for me, Lorinda.
I've worked with Cora enough to know how to game design, as you can tell.
Well, we're going to do his best to clean up the board, but I'm not really seeing a way that helps him survive and retains a win condition.
Yeah, this is just that I'm not going to die, and then I'm going to try and work out how I get around it. I guess where he's sat, if Baby Bear's hand is utter trash, this board might get it done. So you have to at least set it up.
Okay. Yeah, I say can't win and retain a win condition because he had to use the Bloodsworn Mercenary there, and we've been talking about this 22 combo for the longest time, which involves 4 cards: Corcoran Elite, Inner Rage, that's 6 damage, Rampage, that's 9 damage, and then the Bloodsworn Mercenary.
Yep. Yeah, I can't even see how if everything hits once, including the buffs, how
that was
he even
actually-
does 25 damage in the whole game without healing and stuff.
Yeah. And that's actually just 18, so the other damage would have to have come from the weapon hit and a Kobold Lackey for the full 10 mana. It is far-fetched at this point, to say the least, and Baby Bear can very easily make clear of this board. Just depends whether she feels like this is worth soul mirroring. So far, we've seen her be very patient, so I wouldn't mind her go for some trades instead.
I like this, by the way. Taunt is just the final way to stop yourself from having any sort of problem when you get to the end of these priest games against Warrior, because the Warrior is just relying on those charge minions, and they can't do enough to remove the taunt and do something with the charge minion in the same turn.
Being very, very cautious here. Even trades her 3/3 into a 5/1, both to get the Boombot on board and also be able to fit in the hero power, because had she taken a value trade on the 2/2 instead, Forbidden Words would have to have been used to get rid of a 5/1, at which point she'd only have 1 mana, can't fit in the hero power. Taking every precaution here, and I think totally warranted here. Zever's towards the end of his deck already. Baby Bear can very much get there just by running him out of resources.
Kill him already! I want to see game 4!
This is
yeah,
not
she's
how you do things as a priest, Lorinda. Have you learned
This is
nothing?
why I'm a commentator and not a player. I think it was Sottle
You
who said
can
on
be a
Twitter
player,
recently
just not
that,
of this class.
yeah, the idea of priest isn't to beat your opponent, just make them have as bad a time as possible. And then hopefully beat them at the end of all of it.
Well, we're seeing close to the final push from Zever. He's held on to this drum, but unfortunately I also don't know whether there's a second Inner Rage still in those last 4 cards or not.
Yeah, it matters. It doesn't really matter. I guess if that wasn't that Soul Mirror, then it would matter, because Grom, and then Grom somehow doesn't die, and then Grom again would be a thing that could happen.
And he can just heal up even more now. Apotheosis. Start by discovering something else. Huh.
Yeah.
The Mass Resurrect is intriguing me, but if it gets 3 whiffs, that might be the only way she actually even loses.
Yeah, she set out the stall now to just not lose the game, so the choices are take Mass Resurrection but don't use it, or take Shadow Word Pain and just continue doing what you've been doing. Now I'm praying she doesn't use it, because it looks like she might, and it might make sense to actually use it.
Well, she has to do the odds right. So the worst outcome for Mass Resurrect from her perspective is if it hits 0 taunts and 0 rushers. In which case, she's probably still safe because she's in both the Bloodsworn Mercenaries, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So she is trying to end the game as a priest. I love it.
So soon as well.
Oh, there's a second Inner Rage, but no Bloodsworn behind this.
Just to point out that the race for APAC GM, sorry to cut you off there, I think this one's just about over. If you spot something, shout at me. The race for APAC GM has gone nuts. Give Please is 7-0.
Oh my.
But Tiz, who's the person who he can catch, is 4-3 and urgently needs 6 wins. If Give Please makes top 8, I believe Tiz, and this is not official, this is what I'm reading, what I think, then Tiz would need at least 6 wins to have a chance of retaining that 3rd spot.
Thanks for that, Lorinda. You're like a human ticker that we sometimes have on these streams of the
Yeah,
latest
that'd be fun.
results. Over in this particular game, I wish we could talk more about APAC, but I think Baby Bear and Zever deserve their time in the sun. This Grom, of course, with the Rampage could push at most 15 damage, but Baby Bear can see that it's instantly cleared on board just by trades, and then Zever's only remaining damage is from the Corkron Elite, and I don't know whether there's a weapon left, possibly the Corsair Cash.
And Soul Mirror should be lethal if I'm not insane. I might be insane. There might be enough armor actually to stop it being lethal. You've got Apotheosis. I'll let Baby Bear count it. I can't be bothered. It's only my job.
+4 armor goes back up to 15. And yes, Apotheosis will make the full 15 from the 3 minions that originally could attack.
Yep. Exact lethal, exact mana, and all that sort of stuff. And I like this, weirdly enough. This is something that you see the experienced players doing. Apotheosising the big thing, just in case you've miscounted, just in case you made some stupid heat of the moment mistake under pressure. And it's that sort of thing that leads to fewer mistakes, like if you get into a rope turn as rogue or something. It doesn't matter in that situation as priest, you can do what you like.
Right.
But prioritizing, okay, how do I stop disasters is really helpful.
Yes, definitely. That healing would have put her out of any range of anything Zever could even discover off of an ethereal lackey. And so Baby Bear now is going to queue up her Druid, which on the surface, I would hesitate to say that you should be bringing Druid if your strategy is to target Warrior. However, her list is very different from what we are normally seeing. It does have the Emerald Explorers, which is a bit standard now, I would say, but also has Malagos in there, Alexstrasza. And so she's trying to combo out towards the end. There are no Glowfly Swarms, no Savage Roars in this deck. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I'm slowly being beaten into submission that Druid is favoured in this one, but I'm finding it hard to let go because all my instincts say that Warrior beats Druid, but all the smart people are doing this. If they want to leave Warrior up, they're bringing this version of Druid, so maybe I'll have to accept that I'm just either really good at Warrior or the Druids I've been facing at rank 400 are absolute terrible, and that's the rank 400, not rank 400 Legend.
I have to say, this version didn't even fly on my radar going into the tournament to Baby Bear for finding a very unusual build that could give her an advantage. And you can see it's been working out for her so far, 5-1. Zever, though, not going to go down without a fight. Although the opener is very clunky, hasn't hit the weapons, the Corsair Cache, or a good way to set up the Battle Rage.
I think it's one of the reasons that Europe, feel free to argue this, but I'm going to state it as a fact, that Europe is the strongest region. They seem to play a lot more qualifiers in general, and the community seem to share the latest tech and stuff a lot more than the other two regions.
I won't argue that.
In APAC, Japan seem to be doing that really well right now as well, to be fair.
Sure. And they have their own different take on Druid. And I won't argue that EU is the best region. I think it just can't be denied if you look at the density of players that have been performing well in the Master Tours, even in the previous systems. But I always make the argument for APAC that if you line up the best of APAC versus the best of any other region, we can go toe-to-toe 100%. Just talking about density of the best performing players, definitely in Europe.
I think that's fair. If you take the top 10 or 8 from every single region, there's not a huge amount in it. But if you take the best 200 from every region, then things go Europe's way very quickly.
All right. In any case, Baby Bear managed to hit a very strong opener, ramp into normally Mount Seller, but in this type of build for her, there aren't actually that many cheap spells because of the minions that she's included. Still has the Innervates Moonfire's crystal powers, but this approach of just the dragon curve with an early Alexstrasza already looks like she's pushing lethal next turn.
Yeah, what's her other deck? Because the Warriors don't win these. Yeah, he doesn't even bother messing around this time trying to find a win. There is no way back from that mess, and it's 2 apiece just like that. And Warrior in danger of being reverse swept.
Yeah, I mean, Big Druid, when I hear it for this meta, I tend to think they're running Embiggen and that type of thing. But Baby Bear has found this type of build, and as you said, probably popular among certain European practice groups that if you can hit the dream ramp, you can just bypass that glowfly mid-phase type game plan, which has already seen its criticisms because it gets checked by risky skipper, by quest block removal, and so she's going for this different game plan with the Druid, and I hope we get to see more of it later on. However, it is game 5 now, and she's on that Highlander mage.
Yeah, and this matchup is closer than I think Warrior players give it credit for. It is Warrior favoured, but when the mage gets the taunty hand, and this is the taunty hand, bad things can happen to the Warrior. It can struggle to get through. And if mage gets to 8 mana in particular, that's when they get their real massive power spike. If the Warrior hasn't done some damage to start setting up combo kills by turn 8, the mage can just win the game by attrition at that point.
Sure. We also have to give credit to the way Baby Bear has built this particular mage. It looks to have more anti-aggro tech than I would normally expect, and that's probably with leaving up Warrior in mind. She has this Kobold Sticky Finger, which could come in handy perhaps if the Warrior starts equipping the buffed up weapons, and also with the Captain Greenskin. And then on top of that, there's of course the natural acidic swamp ooze.
No, absolutely. It is, people look at decks from tournaments and do not consider what that deck was built for. Don't take your sticky finger to a ladder in your mage deck. It's not the point. But this is an anti. It's not an anti-warrior, but it's, look, I'm leaving up warrior, so I better be able to deal with warrior deck. And having 2 ways to kill weapons is a fantastic way to get rid of a warrior, especially one that is playing a greenskin, because you get rid of a card and a half if the greenskin body counts as, you know what I mean, the weapon counts as 1 and the body counts as a half. Just by sticky fingering, like, it's just so fantastic for the mage to have this build.
If not hard targeting, definitely hedging against this matchup. But I would argue it is actually a target from Baby Bear. If you're bringing a Druid that heavy, a mage like that, and Priest, I would say he is all in on beating Warrior. And that's such a bold strategy. It's actually going to work out for her so far.
Yep, getting the first 2 parts of the reverse sweep, but leaving this one till last indicates that this is the part she thinks might be the hardest of the 3.
Very true. We start off with Arcane Breath, dig for a better way to use up her mana. I'm looking at this ooze to get rid of the Ankar. Of the 3 weapons, I think you would much rather delete an Ankar from getting its full value before the live wire lands. I think that the guaranteed skippers in hand are much more threatening than random lackeys.
Absolutely, those skippers. Mage can build semblances of a board, and if that board sticks, the warrior can't win. Having the skipper can help you remove that. We might even see the brawl taken here. It wouldn't surprise me, just for emergencies later.
Oh, really? I was looking at the other 2 as both
you could
potentially
take either of the
great
other 2
options.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, Corsair Cash, obviously to draw the other live wire lands guaranteed, does mean that the natural second one in the D offline if you take it, but it is just cycle, which you kind of need to power out or thin the deck towards battle rages. But of course, execute is excellent versus mage as well, to the point where when they start playing their taunty things, as you said, it can be a convenient way for warrior to just ignore them.
What bothers me, and I was trying not to cast Vision it, but Deep Freeze sometimes just loses the warrior the game.
Oh, yes.
So that's why I would be drawn towards the brawl, unless there's a specific immediate need to execute something. But execute's fine, and honestly, Corsair Cash with a greenskin in hand is also fine. So hedging my bets to the absolute max there, even to the ones that I know he didn't take, I think are good.
So Spellbender and Counterspell there were a bit interesting to me. My first thought was Counterspell because of the ability to maybe shut off a Battle Rage is huge. But Spellbender makes a ton of sense because Warrior is running not just Inner Rage, but Rampage, both of which target minions in particular. Outside of that and the Battle Rage, there's not many spells at all.
Yep, really good choice. You know that it's going to come in handy at some point. Plus, with it being such a weird one, it's kind of the forgotten secret a lot of the time. It's the one that often just makes your opponent actually make a mistake rather than just play around it.
This big, though, for Xever, able to build up a very high health minion. If he wants, he can cash in the Inner Rage immediately and take the trade. I think he's just counting what that minus health implication has for a Reno on the other side. Say if he had gone Inner Age, goes down to 11, and then takes a trade, goes down to 9, and then the Reborn can trade back down to 7, and that still would have been 12 health on board, but a little bit scary. I don't mind that he waits instead here.
So the problem for Baby Bear here is this exact turn. She's got 2 8-drops, which again is where you want to be with Mage. You want to be sort of level, maybe a touch behind going into the 8-drops, and then just spew 8-drops on the board, and the Warrior has a lot of trouble. But he has kept back the Risky Skipper and Clear potential, so it's going to get pretty close, I think, this one.
Right. Battle Rage draw is huge as well. Perceiver knows that this is the generated secret, and so has to start worrying about counterspell potential. Could see him throw out Inner Rage first to test for it.
Yeah, I was thinking that what might save him, maybe, is the fact that he might be looking at a combo kill. Nope. Spellbender does its thing.
Pretty huge here. Funny interaction with Spellbender. It doesn't need the condition on the original card to get the buff, similar with Dire Frenzy. So it will get +3/+3 even though the token isn't damaged.
Yeah, that's a trivia question that comes up, so it's worth remembering about which minion can be executed as well. That occasionally comes up on streams and such like.
All right.
Oh, the choices.
There's a ton here. As long as she gets rid of the skipper, I think we're looking fine.
I think you want to get
Raider, pops out at me first just because of the way the 9 lines up and you already have a source of 4 on board.
That makes a lot of sense. You want to do the deep freeze on a more empty board than this, so you can start freezing face every turn. And of course, every turn now you've got to try and calculate what Zephyrus might possibly give you, which varies a lot.
Zephyrus this turn, I don't feel like this board is shaped the Zephyrus turn. And also the downside of the Rusty Raider play is that you wouldn't have enough charges to get rid of both the skipper and the Captain Greenskin afterward. So I like that she's instead preemptively damaged this board, can take explosive shot now and get rid of the problematic minions.
You know, I spent the whole of the last game talking about the number 22. When 9 mana gets reached, that is available on this game already.
Oh, you're right. The 5-card combo.
Yeah, it's all in hand. So his job now is to just set up your opponent down to 22. That's it.
And he's got the weapon charge still if he doesn't swing it this turn. And I feel like at this point, you're probably not going to bother putting any damage that can go face into minions. Just going to create a distraction for Baby Bear, a very wide board.
Yeah, and also trying to get some face damage. I mean, she is well above 22, so trying to get some face damage from these bombs just to get that last bit of damage across, as well as you say, this distraction. So if she has an AoE spell, it will clear this board and she'll take some damage.
Yeah. I actually saw Baby Bear hold on to that ice barrier for some... I haven't actually played enough Highlander Mage to know if there's some nuance to when you play it or not outside of, I guess, Alex Strasza things, but that seems too far in the game to matter. In any case, Baby Bear gonna rip that Malagos, looking for the AoE. She gets it, and that will still leave a Boombot on board, though.
Yeah, and she doesn't want to be taking... There's 25 coming next turn if he wants it. So 7 points of bomb damage would be lethal if I'm not insane, but I am. So who knows?
Is that a spell missequencing there? Because if you go Arcane Explosion and then there's only one extra space, not both bombs get developed, but then she traded spaces and then one bomb gets developed anyway? Or
you might be right.
I'm not 100% sure, but it's not a big deal to miss face damage in this instance because she is the defender in the situation.
This is amusing me because he's clearly counting this up.
Oh, yes.
And that's because nobody playtests Warrior. Because you don't need to playtest Warrior for a big tournament. Because it's going to get banned a lot.
Well, Lorinda, if this bomb cooperates, it's just lethal.
Yeah,
But
it didn't.
it-
So
Sent 4 to the wrong part. Still, this is tons of damage that he can front load. But Baby Bear down to 4 and
Yeah.
create a very threatening board. How does she deal with this?
she's just used the Malagos, which is really bad. Draw Reno.
Okay,
It's
that's a
probably a
good
good
step
plan.
1. Or draw box, I guess. She has
That's
the-
also
oh,
interesting.
Oh no. Okay, there's Reno.
She
Okay.
drew Reno. And that swings so much actually here.
Huge, because Beaver has used so much burst potential already. Not 100%, there's still the Grom in there, but the fact that both Inner Rage have been cashed in significantly dampens the amount of damage he can actually do. There's a third rather, Inner Rage though.
Oh, interesting. I go for Dimensional Ripper there nearly every time, and I go for Avenging Wrath here nearly every time.
Yeah, yes, the Wrath.
Dimensional Ripper, when you've got
Agree.
Grom still in your deck, you just play it. And if you get 2/3/3s, unlucky.
Yeah, or 2 2/2s, or 2 skippers, or...
It doesn't matter, you just play it. It's just such a good card for value. He'll know his deck composition better than me, but yeah. But the Avenging
Alright.
Wrath is looking brutal here. Baby Bear can heal back up to 15?
Yeah, and she did actually get a certain amount of healing from the Reno. Of course, if she chooses to play Alexstrasza, it's negated. I am looking at the Deep Freeze still as it gets her wider board presence that threatens consistent freezing.
Mm-hmm.
If she goes Rusty Raider, then that means she's loading up the Mana Saver, and I'm not sure what the extra mana necessarily achieves, but untargetable compared to Twilight Drake, so that gives her a preemptive removal in a way.
And she needed it. This damage is so close. Is that actually... It's not lethal because of the Mana Saber, right?
Mhm.
But it's lethal quite often.
We'll see. There's 2 Kobold. Well,
Yeah. It's not looking good
yeah,
for Baby Bear fans.
that is going to be Gigi.
3-2, and Baby Bear will go down to 5-2. Viva will go to 6-1, alongside quite a few other players. You see me looking off the screen. I'm sorry about my rudeness, but PNC is also 6-1. And which world champion got relegated from Grandmasters?
Well, that is a pretty sad
Which
thing
world
to
champion got
think about.
relegated from Grandmasters before Grandmasters even ever began?
Oh,
Yeah,
is this a-
Osaka is 6-1.
Oh, okay. Man, I was so slow
You're
to
supposed
get
to
your
say
joke,
Pavel,
but
and I'm
yes,
supposed to say
or
no, but yes, but no, and we were supposed to have a bit of a joke. Yeah, Osaka
Sorry.
is 6-1.
Yeah, Kaka coming back onto the scene. He seems very in and out of Hearthstone, but yeah, it's funny you make the joke that he got relegated from Grandmasters before it even started. It's more like I think he didn't get the email, wasn't left out of is the main thing, because of course he was such a dominant player back in his run throughout 2015, and it seems like whenever he decides to come back onto the scene, got a lot to show for it, and a very impressive score right now.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if he ever actually really leaves, or if he's always just in there keeping an eye on things and keeping himself quiet. But yeah, well done to Ziva there. He's going to go to 6-1 along with, I'm not reading them all out, but Monsanto and Swids catch the eye. We've not really mentioned the current GMs much at all. So there are a couple of them up there fighting. Obviously, a couple of them also gave up after 2 losses, which is rather disappointing. But yeah, the guys who are up there fighting, that's a better look at Dead Draw, another 6-1.
Oh, wow. That's incredibly impressive. How many top 8s has this guy made so far? Of course,
All of them, I think.
yeah, all the
it's
top
just
8s. Dead Draw
ridiculous.
is just an auto seed into the top 8. Probably makes you really proud as a UK player, but a bunch of other names that I want to mention here from the APAC region, of course, Give Please and Piano Killer, I think, from Taiwan, I believe, both of them. And I've run into them at previous tour stops in our old system. Glad to see that they're still kicking and have a very good chance of making it into GM, possibly also Alan Numbers, another player that could be a very strong representative. And Swids over there, at the top of the second column with strong performance, capping off a pretty strong performance in GM. Love to see it.
Yeah, I think Sottle and Raven were saying how much Swizz settled down this year and like really looked like he belonged in GM. And so seeing him back up those comments is really nice as well. And of course, it wouldn't be the same anyway if you didn't have somebody French picture on the leaderboard display. It's always the same.
Very true. Also worth mentioning, a lot of players from the LATAM region. I've been seeing on Twitter so much that they are supportive of some new faces, and well, they're new to us is the thing, but I'm sure that that community has seen them perform throughout so many different local and international tournaments. Can't wait to see if they could possibly be joining the ranks of Empanizado and Nalgidon in GM.
Well, Gia can't wait to see. I can't wait to see either. So let's stop waffling and get on with round number 8. We'll be back in 2 or 3 minutes.